Hey guys, tonight we tumble back to a winter in 1692 that bites straight through your wool cloak, where the fires sputter in stone hearths and the woods surrounding Salem Village creak, like they're whispering secrets. The snow is thick and the nights are to quiet until they're not. You're trudging home from the meeting house, breath steaming like smoke, when you pass the Wilkins barn and see their cow, stiff-legged and still dead. No wounds, no sickness, just gone. You shrug it off, until someone else's milk spoils overnight. Then a toddler falls sick. Then a servant girl starts screaming in her sleep. Soon enough, Salem feels less like a town and more like a pressure cooker. And you're stuck right in the middle of it. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe. Turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It begins with the cold. Not just the frost kind, but the emotional, marrow-deep chill that creeps into bones and brains alike. Salem Village is poor, fractious, and stretched thin. It's the kind of place where your firewood's never quite enough, and your neighbors are always watching, always. You're surrounded by leafless trees and barren fields, and worst of all, there's nothing new to talk about. Just the same three topics over and over: land disputes, sermons, and that lingering fear that someone, somewhere, is casting spells behind closed shutters. You hear about Reverend Samuel Parris, the newly appointed minister at the Salem Village meeting house, who's not exactly winning hearts. A firebrand type, all brimstone and no biscuits. His sermons are bleak, his enemies numerous, and his own household. Well, that's where the strangeness really starts. His niece Abigail and daughter Betty have begun to twitch and shriek, not like spoiled children, but like puppets on invisible strings. They crawl under tables, they bark, they claim invisible hands are choking them. You'd think they were playing until you see it up close. The blank eyes, the nails digging into their own skin, and worse when you touch them. Their skin is ice. Doctors, of course, are useless. One finally mutters the words that will doom this entire town. This affliction is unnatural. And you feel it then. That slow rising in your gut, like someone's lit a candle behind your belly button. Witchcraft. Here's where it gets sticky. Salem Village isn't just some cozy colonial hamlet. It's deeply divided. Old Puritan settlers clash with newcomers. Poor farmers resent merchant elites. And everyone has their own idea of how holy is holy enough. And then there's that lingering grudge between Salem Village and nearby Salem town. Same name, very different vibes. One's a backwoods farming village. The other's growing into a seaport with commerce, politics, and worst of all, ideas. You can't help but wonder, though, why now? Why this year? Historians still argue whether it was something in the ergot-contaminated rye, which can cause hallucinations, or just a brutal cocktail of boredom, repression, and unresolved village feuds. But at the time, all that matters is that someone is doing this to those girls. And if someone's doing it, someone needs to burn. The first whispers of accusation are quiet. A servant, a slave, someone poor, someone foreign, someone not in church last Sunday. Her name is Tituba, and you've probably seen her fetching water or humming strange songs under her breath. She's not like the others. She tells stories, legends, spirits, magic circles scratched in dirt, and suddenly those stories come crawling out of the fireplace like smoke. Under pressure, Tituba confesses, sort of. She says yes, she did talk to the devil, but only because he forced her. And she saw others with him, 2 names, then 3, then 10. You watch the snow fall outside as the list grows longer, and your breath catches. Someone you know is on it. This is the point where everything fractures. The town splits along old fault lines, and you realize just how flimsy the boundary between suspicion and evidence has become. One bad look at church, you're a witch. A grudge over cows grazing on the wrong field. Witch. That time you muttered when your neighbor's child cried too loud. Oh, definitely witch. You're starting to realize how easy it is to become the monster everyone needs, and how hard it is to prove you're not. For context, the Puritans believed in a very specific kind of devil. He wasn't just some spooky figure in a red jumpsuit with horns. He was a recruiter, always offering power, always whispering contracts. And witches, in this worldview, weren't just casting spells, they were betraying the entire community to Satan himself. What's quirky if you can squint past the doom is that colonial New England had witch cakes. Yes, really. People would mix rye meal with the afflicted girl's urine, bake it, feed it to a dog, and see if the dog reacted. If it did, they said, The dog was bewitched, proof that someone nearby was doing the devil's work. Imagine baking that in your 400-degree oven today. There's your Halloween recipe. And here's another delightful twist. No one is immune. Even those who testify with righteous fury can become suspects themselves. The moment they stumble or hesitate. 1 minute you're leading a prayer circle, the next, someone's pointing and screaming mid-sermon. You're starting to dread eye contact. People stop sleeping. Candles burn all night in wooden windows. Children cry at nothing. And your dreams? Well, let's just say they've taken a turn. You wake up sweating. Sure, you've seen someone fly. Not metaphorically, literally lift off the ground in moonlight. Worse, part of you starts wondering, what if it's true? And just when you think it can't escalate further, someone suggests holding public hearings. You don't need to know how that ends to realize it's about to get a lot darker. You're sitting in the wooden gallery of Salem Village's meeting house, hands cold even though the room is packed and thick with breath. Outside, the snow hasn't melted in days. Inside, it's something hotter: fear, judgment, anticipation. The kind of heat that makes your skin feel itchy from the inside out. In front of you, a girl drops to the floor screaming. Another convulses in her pew. A third begins to babble about yellow birds and a shadowy woman in a black cloak, perched on the rafter beams. And suddenly, the townsfolk round you begin to nod, some nervously, some triumphantly, because this is proof. You don't even realize you're holding your breath until someone shouts a name. The crowd turns. A widow in her 50s. She's lived here for decades, never remarried, keeps mostly to herself. She squints when she reads, so some folks say she's always scowling. And now they say she's bewitched the children. You feel the shift, like a stage play changing acts. Because it's not about the girls anymore, it's about who they're pointing to. The afflicted girls are at the center of it all now. Abigail Williams, and Putnam Jr., Mercy Lewis, Elizabeth Hubbard. Their names swirl around the taverns and the fire pits in whispered tones and loud debates. 1 minute they're pitiful victims, the next they're holding court. You see them walk carefully to the meeting house, eyes glassy, limbs jerking. They claim to see spirits, shadows behind accused women, spectral hands pinching them, invisible birds attacking their faces. They scream mid-sentence, fall into spasms, speak in tongues. Are they acting, possessed, sick? Historians still argue whether it was religious delusion, psychological stress, or some communal madness fed by repression and fear. But in the moment, you're not asking those questions, because when Abigail points, you feel it, pure terror. You don't want to believe her, but you definitely don't want to be the one she accuses next. And here's where the panic catches flame. Once accused, you're in a trap if you deny it. They say your defiance proves the devil is protecting you. If you confess, well, you might live, but only if you name others. So now people are confessing left and right, tossing out names like wet laundry. Anyone who's ever looked at them sideways. People who owe them money. People with strange pets. People who sing. Even you've caught yourself scanning your neighbors. Who has a mole in a weird place? Who whispered something quietly in the fields? Who laughed when they shouldn't have? One of the oddest accusations, a man who supposedly turned into a blue boar and tried to trample someone's crops. That story spreads like wildfire, not because it makes sense, but because it doesn't. And right now, the more bizarre the accusation, the more it sticks. The trials move into a proper courtroom, now first in Salem, then transferred to Ipswich and Boston. They call it the Court of Oyer and Terminer. And if that name sounds French and sinister, that's because it kind of is. It means to hear and determine. Except, you realize there's not much real determining going on. Just a lot of listening to girls scream, and adults trying to keep up. The judges, they're mostly hard-nosed Puritan men with a passion for order and a suspiciously loose grasp on legal standards. Chief among them is William Stoughton, who leans hard into accepting spectral evidence, the idea that someone's spirit can torment a victim while their body sleeps peacefully in jail. Yes, you heard that right. Someone can be asleep in shackles and still stand trial for supernatural assault based entirely on someone else's dream. And here's where you finally learn the new rules. Your body no longer belongs just to you. Your spirit can now be guilty of crimes your flesh never committed. The meeting house stern courtroom smells of damp wool and terror. Each morning, people crowd in, hoping not to see a familiar face on the accused bench. You sit through testimony after testimony, your stomach a fist. One girl claims she saw Goody Proctor's ghost hover over her bed. Another says a man specter urged her to sign the devil's book. A third points at a tree outside and shrieks, There's the black man, he's watching us now. The black man, of course, is their term for the devil. A cloaked figure with eyes like fire and a voice like wind through the trees. He's everywhere and nowhere. And always, always. Recruiting. You start sleeping with your boots on, just in case they come for you in the night. And yet, some still resist. One of them is Rebecca Nurse, 60-something, deaf in one ear, a pillar of the church. Her reputation is sterling, her family respected. But she's accused anyway when she's finally brought in shaking, bewildered. Barely able to speak, the girls begin screaming immediately. You're watching, stunned, as Abigail collapses and says Rebecca's ghost is squeezing her throat. Even you don't believe it. But when the judge asks if Rebecca is a witch, she replies, I am as innocent as the child unborn. She refuses to confess. No theatrics, no crying, just steady denial. And still, they find her guilty. The night after her sentence, the village is quiet in a different way. Like something sacred just broke. Historians today often ask why the village didn't stop the madness right then, why the execution of someone so deeply respected didn't break the spell. But maybe it did fracture it just a little. Enough for some folks to start whispering doubts. But not loudly. Not yet. Because louder than the doubts are the screams. Louder still is the silence when names are called. And loudest of all, the sound of the village turning on itself. Day by day, you notice people changing. Friends grow quieter. Strangers turn their faces. Even laughter sounds strained now, like it's echoing from a place far away. The worst part is the realization that fear has become addictive. That you don't just dread the next accusation, you meet it. Because if they're pointing at someone else, they're not pointing at you. And deep down, you know, the storm hasn't even crested yet. You've started walking the long way to fetch water, just to avoid passing certain houses. It's not about the people, not really. It's about the eyes in the windows. Watching, measuring, wondering if your cough means you're cursed, or if your silence means you're guilty. You know now that suspicion is the new currency of Salem, and it's cheaper than bread. The court still sits, and the names still pouring. But something has shifted. The accusations, once centered on the fringe and the friendless, are creeping inward. Elizabeth Proctor, John Proctor, Martha Corey. These are people with land, families, reputations, the scaffolding of the town. If they can be witches, anyone can. John Proctor is particularly vocal. He calls the girls frauds. He says the court is a farce. And for a moment, you think someone might listen. But then one of the afflicted girls screams that his spirit pinched her thigh. Another says he came to her in a dream, covered in fire. He's arrested within the week. His wife, too. Pregnant. That doesn't save her, only postpones her sentence. And now, another figure enters the storm, Cotton Mather. You've heard of him. The Harvard-educated minister, son of Increase Mather, a towering theological figure. Cotton is a prolific writer, a man of fierce conviction and bottomless vocabulary. He's got one foot in scripture and the other in science, but the 1692 version of science, where astronomy and alchemy shake hands awkwardly. Mather's role is strange. He doesn't run the court, but he influences it, publishes pamphlets defending the trials, cautioning against too much skepticism. He believes the devil is at work. Absolutely, but he's also nervous about the court relying too heavily on spectral evidence. Still, in public, he leans toward the puritanical party line, root out evil before it rots the body politic. It's like watching someone try to tame a bonfire with a feather. Good intentions, maybe. But the smoke keeps rising. Spectral evidence becomes the backbone of the trials. It's slippery, impossible to defend against. Abigail might say she saw your ghost slap her. You might insist you were churning butter at that exact moment. Doesn't matter. The ghost did it. End of story. It's the legal equivalent of trust me, bro. You start hearing other stories now, ones that sound like fever dreams. A man claimed he saw a witch fly into his barn and turn into a red fox. Another said he watched a woman's reflection move on its own, even as she sat still. These aren't just tales anymore, they're testimonies, entered into record, sworn under oath. One of the more infamous moments, a man named George Burroughs is brought from Maine to stand trial. He used to be a minister in Salem, but left under bad terms. He's accused of leading the witch as the ringleader of the devil's cabal. When he stands at the gallows and flawlessly recites the Lord's Prayer, something shivers through the crowd. Supposedly, a witch can't say the prayer. You hold your breath, waiting for a reprieve, but there is none. He hangs anyway. And you wonder, was that moment of doubt enough to plant a seed? Or did it just vanish like his last breath in the wind? The gallows on Proctor's Ledge, often confused with Gallows Hill, isn't much. A tree, a rope, a rocky slope, but it's quickly becoming the village's most visited landmark. You try not to look when you pass. but you hear the creak of rope in your dreams. And then there's the odd little tidbit about witch marks. You hear folks talking about them constantly now. Tiny blemishes on the body, considered signs of a pact with the devil. A mole, a skin tag, a scar. Something as simple as a birthmark near your ankle becomes a cause for examination. Midwives are ordered to inspect the accused thoroughly. The most bizarre witches' teats, spots where familiars supposedly suckle, rats, cats, even invisible demons in the shape of insects. One poor woman is condemned after they find a mosquito bite on her thigh. You think about that one every time you scratch an itch. And while the rest of the world starts to hear whispers of what's happening in Massachusetts, the village itself spirals deeper. Someone reports seeing ghosts of the dead floating through the trees. A man claims his livestock now speaks Latin at night. No one even blinks. You start avoiding people altogether. If you're noticed too much, they'll say you're plotting. If you're too quiet, they'll say you're hiding something. There's no safe setting anymore, no normal. The only thing left is to hope you stay invisible, harmless, forgettable. And then there's Giles Corey, 81 years old. Doesn't say much. Owns land. When he's accused, he doesn't play along. Refuses to plead guilty or not guilty. Just stays silent. He knows that pleading either way will let the court confiscate his property. But if he says nothing, his estate passes to his sons. So they press him. Literally. They lay him on his back, pile stones on his chest, day after day, asking for a plea. He doesn't scream, doesn't beg. He just groans one sentence. More weight. He dies with the stones still stacked. You don't know whether to be horrified or inspired. Maybe both. But you remember it. Everyone does. Historians still argue whether the afflicted girls believed what they were doing. Were they traumatized, manipulated, power drunk? Some seem haunted by guilt later. Others never recant. But in this moment, you realize belief in Salem is more dangerous than poison. Once someone believes you're a witch, no law can save you. Only luck. Or death. And the worst part, there's still more to come. You know it by the way the wind shifts. By the way the church bells seem to ring lower, slower, as if mourning ahead of time. Because fear isn't finished with Salem yet. Not by a long shot. You wake up before the sun now. Not because you're eager to start the day, but because every creak of the floorboards feels like the start of a knock at your door. Salem has changed. You can feel it in your shoulders, your chest, your bones. It's not just suspicion anymore, it's resignation. Like the village has collectively agreed to hold its breath and never exhale. The executions are no longer rare events. They've become routine. You can chart them like market days. 20 people have now been condemned to die. Most by hanging. A few others have died in prison, sick or broken long before any rope touched their necks. And yes, one man was crushed beneath stones, his breath squeezed out slowly while magistrates demanded a word he never gave. It's July now. The earth is dry. The sun cruel. And Gallows Hill, a misnamed place, really. Since most of the hangings happen on Proctor's Ledge, has become a stage you don't want to watch. But everyone does. Not out of morbid fascination, well, not entirely, but because it's safer to be seen among the crowd than to be absent and questioned later. You stand beneath the same elm tree each time. You try not to flinch when the trapdoor opens. But the sound it makes, that sharp one, and clack, lodges itself behind your teeth. Like a splinter you can't spit out. One day, Martha Corey is brought up. She prays, as many of them do. You hear someone in the crowd whisper, "She's faking." Another says, "The devil lets them pray to confuse us. It's a game you can't win." If you scream and weep, they say it's the demon resisting. If you stay calm and solemn, they say that's the devil being clever. It's around this time you realize something you probably knew all along. Silence is dangerous. Refusing to confess isn't seen as innocence. It's seen as prideful, obstinate. Proof that Satan has you so deeply you won't even beg to be saved. That's why people are confessing now. Not because they're guilty, but because it's the only way to live. You admit you're a witch, then you name others, and maybe they let you go. It's like digging yourself out of quicksand by stepping on someone else's back. And so you get a flood of confessions. Some absurd, some suspiciously convenient. A girl says she saw 98 witches dancing in a field behind her house. A man says the devil appeared to him disguised as a tall man in Boston wearing lace cuffs. There's even a rumor someone saw a witch ride a pig straight into a thundercloud. You would laugh if your jaw wasn't so clenched all the time. Meanwhile, back in Boston, the intellectuals are starting to squirm. The executions have drawn attention from across the colonies. Pamphlets circulate, debates flare. Some ministers, including Increase Mather, Cotton's own father, start publicly criticizing the court. Better 10 witches go free than one innocent man be condemned, Increase says, and suddenly you can feel the ground shifting, but not fast enough. On September 22nd, 8 more people are hanged. You know most of their names by now. Mary Eastie, Samuel Wardwell, and Putiator. You hear the clatter of carts hauling them through town. One woman sings hymns all the way to the gallows. Another forgives the judges with her last breath. And just like that, the tally reaches 20. There are no more cheers, no applause. Even the crowd at the gallows has thinned. It's like the town has exhausted its appetite for blood, but doesn't know how to stop eating. Your dreams are filled with gallows poles and twisting ropes. You see the dead not as ghosts, but as memories with unfinished sentences. You hear their voices in bird song and the creak of the well's pulley. That's when the rumors start to drift in quietly at first. People in Salem town are questioning the legality of the trials. Merchants in Boston are pulling back support. Even the governor, William Phips, who once empowered the court of Oyer and Terminer, is said to be reconsidering. Why? Because his own wife has now been accused. That's right. The fire has reached the marble steps of Boston's elite, and it turns out fear spreads fast, but so does self-preservation. Within weeks, Governor Phips disbands the court just like that. No fanfare, no apology, just a terse letter, a formal dissolve. Trials will continue, sure, but under a new court, the Superior Court of Judicature and Spectral Evidence. Gone. It feels surreal, like someone blew out a candle and the room hasn't quite gone dark yet. The accusations stop almost overnight. The afflicted girls fall quiet. No more spasms. No more shrieking about yellow birds or clawing spirits. You feel the silence settle over the town. Like a thick fog. Everyone's exhausted. Everyone's pretending nothing happened. And yet, it did. 20 dead by rope. 1 crushed to death. Dozens imprisoned. Hundreds accused. Families ruined. Land confiscated. Reputations shattered. And all of it with no devil ever caught. No flying pigs captured. No haunted trees chopped down. Just ends. Like someone flipped a switch. You start to hear whispers in a different tone now. Not of witches, but of regret. That maybe things went too far. That maybe, just maybe, mistakes were made. The judges go quiet. Some of the afflicted girls move away. Some marry and keep their past locked up tighter than a Puritan pantry. Others, well, historians still argue whether they believed what they said, whether the fits were real or rehearsed. But here in Salem, you know better than to ask out loud. In a town that once howled, now no one speaks above a whisper. You visit the cemetery one evening, just to walk, just to feel, and you see a stone worn and crooked, nearly buried in moss, no name, just a date. You realize it's one of the accused, buried in silence because the church refused them holy ground. You stand there a while, listening to the wind, and you wonder not for the first time if Salem will ever be the same. If a place can recover from setting fire to its own soul, the answer, you suspect, is not entirely. The snow returns quietly, as if trying to erase everything that happened. It falls over Gallows Hill, over the broken fences and cracked steps, over the graves without names. You step outside one morning, crunching through fresh powder, and everything is white, soft, muffled, almost peaceful, but you know better. The trials have stopped. The court is gone. Governor Phips has issued a general pardon for the remaining accused. Prison slowly empty. Those who confess try to slip back into society like their words can be unsaid. And you're left standing in a village that still looks the same, but doesn't feel like home anymore. People don't talk about it, not directly. They talk around it, that long summer, those months. If someone brings up the gallows, eyes drop to the ground. If a name is mentioned, Rebecca, Giles, Proctor, you hear someone clear their throat and change the subject. You'd think that silence might heal things, but it doesn't. It just calcifies the guilt. You hear that some of the judges are apologizing in private. Samuel Sewell, the only one who does it publicly, stands up in church one Sunday in 1697 and reads a formal confession. He says he's sorry for his part in the trials. He prays for mercy. The congregation shifts awkwardly. Some forgive him. Others don't. The afflicted girls, once the fire starters of the whole catastrophe, vanish into adulthood. Most marry. A few move far away. But in Putnam Jr., years later, does something remarkable. In 1706, she stands in front of her congregation and says plainly, I was wrong. She says she was deluded by Satan. She begs forgiveness. It's not dramatic. It's not detailed. But it's something. And in Salem, something feels like a miracle. Still, the damage is everywhere. The Proctors never get their land back. The Nurse family erects a small marker. But no grave for Rebecca. Too dangerous. Too political. And the shadow lingers not just over the families of the dead, but over the entire region. Massachusetts never forgets. In fact, it takes decades for any real restitution to happen. In 1711, the colony finally passes a bill that reverses the convictions of some of the accused and pays partial compensation to their families, but only some, not all, and only money, no words, no names carved in stone. You sit in the meeting house one winter evening, listening to a new minister preach about justice, and you wonder if anyone in the room actually believes it. Justice. After all this, historians today still argue whether the whole episode was fueled more by religious extremism or raw politics. Some say it was ergot poisoning in the rye. Others say it was collective trauma. Fallout from King Philip's War, from raids in Maine, from a culture wound tight for too long. But here, in the quiet streets of Salem, the answer doesn't matter. Not really. What matters is that a village ate itself alive. That fear built a fire no one could put out. That the law turned on its people, and the people let it happen. Years pass, then decades. Salem grows, changes. The Proctor farm becomes a dairy. The Nurse homestead turns into a museum. Tourists come with cameras. They buy witch hats and listen to ghost stories and eat sandwiches at cafes with names like Wicked Good Deli. The town makes peace with its past the way some people live with a limp, by pretending it never really hurt. And yet, the names remain. You walk the old cemetery, and you see them etched into new stones. Placed centuries late, but carefully, reverently. Giles Corey, Rebecca Nurse, John Proctor. People bring flowers, letters, pebbles. Someone even left a copy of the Crucible pages, fluttering in the breeze. Because yes, the Salem witch trials became a play, a metaphor, a lesson. Arthur Miller used it in the 1950s to talk about McCarthyism and the Red Scare. And suddenly, Salem's ghosts were speaking to another generation, warning them, reminding them. It keeps happening, every time fear starts to whisper louder than reason. Someone says, let's not repeat Salem. And yet, you still see it, don't you? In headlines, in hashtags, in mobs, in rumors that spread too fast, too shallow to check. You wonder if the witch trials ever really ended or if they just changed shape. You think about that winter in 1692. About the snow. About the screaming. About the long wooden benches and the girls with their glassy eyes. And deep down, that history is never really past. It just sleeps, waiting. But tonight, you're safe. The gallows are quiet. The stones are cold. And Salem is sleeping. The wind outside softens as the candlelight flickers low, shadows slipping gently across old walls. You settle deeper under your blanket, heart still echoing with footsteps on frozen paths and voices from centuries past. But they're quieter now, aren't they? Fainter, as if the last ropes have finally loosened. The last breath gently released into the still Massachusetts air. Think of that snow falling across the village green, softening rooftops, blanketing old stones in silence, the kind that heals more than it buries. And imagine yourself standing in that hush, boots buried, cheeks cold, watching it all vanish under white. The trials have ended, the names remain, but the fear that once crackled in every hearth has burned itself out. What lingers now is memory and perhaps, if we're lucky, a little wisdom stitched into the quiet. So breathe in slowly and let it go. Let the ghosts settle. Let the gallows fade. Let the stories rest. Tomorrow the sun will rise again over Salem. The fields will thaw, and the wind will carry only the sound of crows and children and wagons, not accusations, not sorrow. You made it through the storm, through the fear, through the fire, and now you sleep.